Welcome to Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com as well as the mobile app. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Meadow with you for the next 60 minutes. And multiple ways you'd interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. Hashtag Giants Chat on Twitter. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So today we're going to take a deep dive into an interesting article that CBSSports.com wrote up where they had all 32 teams, and they said one non-quarterback that each team cannot afford to lose. So we'll focus on the 4 NFC East teams and clearly start with the New York Giants. And curious your feedback, because I think you could go in a variety of different directions, Paul, with respect to this question. But let's start with who the article focused on, and that is the Giants starting left tackle, Andrew Thomas, who clearly should be one of the strongest candidates in this conversation, considering he's the anchor of the offensive line, and when healthy, he has been the steadiest offensive lineman. And also, part of this equation is looking at the depth chart, right? If he went down, who you'd have to turn to, and we've had these conversations. Tyree Phillips, I think right now, is a strong contender to be that swing tackle, but there's a distinct difference between an Andrew Thomas and a Tyree Phillips. So I have no point of contention. I think Andrew Thomas is a very good candidate to throw out there.
I've got Andrew Thomas as allowing 2 sacks last year, one to Parsons and one to Sweat. That's it. He was outstanding. We know he was second team all NFL. It's pretty hard to argue against Andrew Thomas in this question. If you wanted to and say, give me an alternate, I'd probably go Dexter Lawrence.
That's fair.
But I don't think it's that close. I think there's a gap.
Well, I think Dexter is a good one because of not necessarily his production, but what he does for the guys around him.
That's my point.
You have to take that as part of this conversation. And another player that I was thinking of throwing out there was Adoree Jackson, but the Giants experienced life without Adoree last season and held up pretty good under the circumstances. So we actually have tangible evidence to say, not to show that he's not valuable, but you lost him for X amount of games, and I think Wink was able to maneuver the defense accordingly.
Yes, and when you consider that the drop-off after Andrew Thomas, at least right now, would be Nacho or Robinson.
Yep.
And quite frankly, you know, having not seen those guys on a play-by-play basis, I'm still not 100% sure exactly what they will deliver. I know what they've done in the past.
Yep.
They've got some decent credentials. They've got they've got at the very least rotational capabilities. But you're talking about an all-pro in Dexter Lawrence who at times flat out dominates a particular possession or a series. That's pretty hard to match.
Plus, I think there's also more sack upside.
No doubt.
Dexter Lawrence.
No doubt.
I mean, Ashawn Robinson and Nacho are seasoned veterans, but if you look at their numbers over the course of their careers, they're not guys that are going to give you 7.5 sacks potentially. So there is a drop-off when you look at it through that lens.
You know what's interesting about that? Everybody talks about Dexter Lawrence's 7.5 sacks, and they were great. Please don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. How underrated was Freddie Robbins when he played in Steve Spagnuolo's defense? And I believe 4 consecutive years, he had 5 or 5.5 sacks. For 4 consecutive years. It wasn't just like a flash. Freddie Robbins, man, was one hell of a player. One dynamite defensive tackle. And, of course, I'll even go back before that and tell you Keith Hamilton should have gone to the Pro Bowl at least 2 or 3 times. And somehow, some way, the voters never gave him his just due. But Freddie Robbins was a very underrated player. He didn't last as long as Keith Hamilton. Keith was a lifetime Giant. Freddie had come over from the Minnesota Vikings as a free agent. So I don't think, the duration of his career will create as much respect as it should. But when it comes to those Spags defenses, Freddie Robbins was a very big part of it.
Well, he was surrounded by so many heavy lifters that it's easy
doubt
to overlook him. I brought up his numbers, actually. 6 seasons with the Giants. 4 of the 6, he had at least 5 sacks.
There you go. I think there was 3 in a row, if not 4.
Yeah, there were 3 in a row of 5.5, exactly.
I mean,
that was
how many 06,
07, and 08.
How many defensive tackles, even today in 2022, are capable of doing that?
Very few. Because, once again, to me, sack production from your interior defensive lineman, it's basically icing on the cake. you're not expecting them to be the heavy hitters in that department. You're hoping that they collapse the pocket, right, and then the edge guys go to work. But when you could get the penetration up the gut, like we saw when Dexter Lawrence played the Indianapolis Colts this past season, and he's got two guys, and he's throwing them into the ground, and he's finishing with the quarterback. I mean, that is a very unique capability.
Now, do you want a really scary thought? Do they list Fred's vitals, height, weight? What did he play at?
Let's see. Fred Robbins is listed as 6'4", 325.
Okay. Now, that was a little more on the larger side at the time. We've seen some larger defensive tackles as years have gone on. But at that time, that was a large defensive tackle. Remember, when he was with the Vikings, he was a defensive end. The Giants converted him to defensive tackle. The interesting part about Fred Robbins, I always call him Freddie Robbins because he was such a lovable, gregarious kind of guy. He would always tell us that he was even better at basketball than he was at football. And I would always say to myself, I don't want to argue with him because he's a really big man. But if he was really that skilled in basketball, he would have been a terror.
Well, did you look up to see what his accomplishments may have been in high school?
I never did.
I'm sure he was a multi-sport athlete. Let's see. I'll bring up Fred Robbins' bio. I don't know if they talk about what he did. They mention he went to J.M. Tate High School in Pensacola, Florida.
Okay.
They say he was a student and a letterman in football and baseball. They do not even mention basketball.
Well,
so I'd be curious if he even played high school basketball. Not to say that he can't be a good basketball player, but maybe we have to bring him on to delve into
you know
these
what?
facts.
We've stayed in touch. I could probably reach out to him and get him on.
Well, when David Deal and I did shows on Sirius XM NFL Radio, he'd bring on Robbins here or there. So we had him on a few times. I can't say we analyzed his basketball career, though, in those conversations.
Fun guy, Freddie Robbins. Really enjoyed having him on the team.
Absolutely. If I'm correct, I think what he's doing now is he's helping train players down in Florida.
And he also is very much into charitable endeavors as well. Has a Fred Robbins Foundation. I'm not sure what they officially call it, but he does have a foundation. Just a really good dude.
Well, what you're hitting on is, let's face it, the Giants had a lot of underrated guys at that time period.
No doubt.
I mean, the other player that I was going to throw out is Dave Tollefson. He's another guy that I don't
he
think
was a
gets
defensive
enough
end, though.
No, I understand that, but there were complementary pieces that were extremely productive.
No doubt.
Within those defenses.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's why I always talk about, with this team, you find that third pass rusher, Paul, you're sitting very pretty in terms of giving the offensive line and opposing OCs something extra to think about.
We talk about it all the time. The dynamic duo is great. Batman and Robin are wonderful, but you got to have Alfred the Butler as part of the deal, too.
Yeah, I still think that's disrespectful. You've brought that up. We could do better than Alfred the Butler. Come on. I mean, Alfred's not a superhero. He's just there to assist Batman.
He was a very astute and intelligent individual.
I'm not doubting his intellect, but you're taking a label and you're assigning it to a guy that's much more active than Albert the Butler. He doesn't just press buttons and let Batman's machinery fall into place.
Alfred
That's my point.
was very valuable.
He was. I will give you that.
So that's not discrediting a player by calling him Alfred the Butler.
I just think we could do better. That's all. I think you need to add.
Well, you're not going to go Batgirl, are you?
No, I wasn't going to go.
Okay.
Catwoman. Is that what you were insinuating?
No.
Well, Batgirl. Well, Catwoman is the
Catwoman was on the other side. She was bad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but Catwoman was productive, was she not?
I'm sticking with Alfred.
That's fine. You can stick with Alfred. I just think we
Thank you very much.
We could do better in terms of the label. But the point at least is well taken that some of those guys
I thought you were
going
to go Chief O'Hara.
No, I'm not going to go in that department. You always take it to the extremes whenever we have these types of conversations. It never disappoints from that standpoint. How about we return to the main conversation?
Okay, let's go back to that.
Yes.
Hey, the phones are lighting up.
Sure, obviously, but I want to get to the other NFC East teams as well.
Let's go through that quick.
I
go
think
ahead.
It's relevant as part of this conversation. So Andrew Thomas is the player they name. And the write-up for Andrew Thomas, by the way, is, quote, his 2022 success confirmed his arrival as a top young tackle, just like Penei Sewell in Detroit. For all the talk about getting Daniel Jones more help in terms of the wide receivers, Brian Dable's attack probably hinges more on Thomas standing pat at left tackle to keep his quarterback upright. So that's at least the rationale from that standpoint. Then, as far as the other three teams are concerned, for the Cowboys, they chose Micah Parsons, who I think is a very strong candidate because Micah does so many different things within their defense. He's moved around. if you want to look on the offensive side of the ball, yeah, you can make an argument. C.D. Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. But the bottom line is they spread the wealth. That I don't know if I would pick one of them. And Tony Pollard may be number 2 on the list because they don't have a lot of depth. And we talked about this on our previous shows when we ranked all the positions. Pollard gets hurt. I would probably put Pollard's loss ahead of any of the wide receivers.
I would probably concur. But Pollard's coming off of an injury, so I don't know exactly what he is in 2023.
Sure, but in fairness, he got hurt in the last playoff game, so they really haven't gone many games without his service.
So we don't know.
Right, correct. And that's why I'm willing to go more there than one of the wide receivers.
But Parsons is easy because he is the super headache player on that roster.
Without a doubt. But, I mean, if we're going to name maybe an offensive and a defensive player.
Okay.
So you brought up Dexter Lawrence, so that's why I figured we could do it for every team that was assigned with respect to the NFC East. So moving along, that's Dallas. Then we go to Philadelphia. This was an interesting choice. They chose A.J. Brown. Now, I'm just going to do the write-up here in addition to the name. Right tackle Lane Johnson, one of the best in the game at his spot, is probably more important overall, but he's already an annual candidate to miss a few games due to injury. And if Brown weren't active, Devontae Smith would be Jalen Hurts' only trusted wide receiver. But you got Dallas Goedert, and they utilize a plethora of running backs. A.J. Brown, I think, is one of the guys in the conversation, but if you were saying first choice between offense and defense, I don't know if I'd pick A.J. Brown first.
I'm not even sure if I would pick him as the lead guy on offense.
Yeah.
I might go Jason Kelce.
Well, I think Lane Johnson, the other player that was thrown out, is also an integral part of that offensive line. But, I mean, Kelce, front and center with the quarterback.
Kelce's going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, without a question, sure.
So,
and Kelce has been Mr. Durability. So he's always been reliable.
His production, his emotional intangibles, value to that team is off the charts. I would very seriously promote Kelce as the pick for me.
What I would do is I'd go Lane Johnson and then Kelce, because they do have Cam Jurgens, who they drafted in the second round. I know we haven't seen much of a sample size, but I think they'd be in okay shape. God forbid they did lose Kelce. Lane has gone down previously, and there was a year where they lost multiple offensive linemen.
I know.
It's very hard to replace Lane. I know they have Jordan Mailata on the other side, but their third tackle, I think the jury's a bit out in terms of who that would be. So I actually, if you're going to pinpoint the offensive side of the ball, I'd go 2 offensive linemen before I'd start pointing to the skill set positions. Because here's the thing, Paul. They're so heavily reliable on Jalen Hurts' run ability and the running backs. It all goes back to the offensive line. You start to tinker with the offensive line, you're going to impact those other facets.
The guy I picked plays offensive line.
No, I'm not disputing.
So I won't argue.
I'm just going Lane over Kelce. That's all.
Okay.
We're just flip-flopping our order.
Defensively, that's not an easy question anymore. It would have been Fletcher Cox a few years ago. Right now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who.
Because they rotate so many guys.
Yeah. Who is the most irreplaceable guy on that Philadelphia defense?
Bradbury.
Or Darius Slay. You could say Slay, too. I think you probably go one of the corners, the outside guys, because Avonte Maddox is their nickel. I don't know if I'd go that far, and they missed him a little bit last season. You'd probably have to go one of the starting corners, Bradbury or Slay, unless would you make an argument for Hassan Reddick?
That's what I was just going to look up, as a matter of fact.
That, to me, would not be a stretch. Even though the sacks are piecemeal, Reddick, to me, is in a league of his own, specifically if we're just going to take the linebackers and put them out on an island. I still, though, would go corner. I'd go Darius Slay, then I'd go Hassan Reddick. That would be my order.
Reddick played 74% of the snaps last year. So,
and look at his sack production, too.
Well, I know what his sack production was. What I was curious about was how much did he play? Because not following them on a snap-by-snap basis, I didn't know if he had seen even more than his share of snaps. He saw 74%. I probably would pick Reddick. I probably would.
Okay. I think they're both worthy choices with respect to who is the most valuable. Okay, so the last team is the Washington Commanders.
That's easy.
Okay. Well, maybe you should reveal who you have before I even reveal what the CBS article said.
Well, on offense, it's got to be McLaurin.
Okay.
He truly is that important to what they do. He's not just a big play guy, but he's also their bailout guy. So he does so much for that offense in so many different facets that I cannot ignore him.
Well, that's who they chose, and also you have to take into consideration if Sam Howell is the guy, you need a playmaker like Terry McLaurin.
You better.
For your quarterback. So I completely agree with you from that standpoint. I don't necessarily look at them having one offensive lineman that's going to make or break the entire group. That's the glue that holds everybody together, though. It will be interesting to see players like Nick Gates and Andrew Wiley, who they added from Kansas City. Those are their two splash additions this offseason. And the running backs, they got a variety of guys. Brian Robinson, I think, is probably going to be the workhorse because Gibson was phased out a little bit. But, yeah, I think all roads lead back to Terry McLaurin. If Logan Thomas was healthy enough consistently, Thomas would be up there. The problem is you can't bank on him being available.
Right.
Now on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, to me, I think this is fairly easy in terms of who I would go to. I'm going with Daron Payne.
Yeah, you have to.
I mean, I don't think you could afford to lose him.
No, you have to.
And they just invested a boatload of money like Dexter Lawrence for him.
Correct.
That's the guy.
And that's not exactly a slight to Jonathan Allen either.
No, not at all.
But Payne's got to be the guy.
Yeah, and I think Payne has been a little bit more consistent in terms of the production. But you look at that defensive line, huge year for Chase Young. On a related side note, because this is now an expiring contract. Remember, they didn't pick up the option.
That's right.
If they want him to flourish and they want to get some extra value out of him, there's no hesitation. This has to be the season for him, and also he has to stay on the field. So I thought it was an interesting exercise, and if you want to check that out, it's up on CBSSports.com. It's on their NFL page. We're obviously focusing on the division that impacts the Giants, the NFC East. But once again, Andrew Thomas for the Giants, Micah Parsons for the Cowboys, A.J. Brown for the Eagles, and then Terry McLaurin for the Washington Commanders. So those are the four teams. That's the layout of the land. An opportunity for you to weigh in. 201-939-4513. And we check in. Let's go to Tom in Stratford joining us here on BBKO. What's happening, Tom?
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hi.
Doing right.
I heard you talking about Dexter Lawrence before. And I just wanted to call in and say, to me, the most incredible play I saw the Giants do last year was performed by Dexter Lawrence when he totally blew up Nelson, the guard.
Yeah, well, that was the play I was referring to.
Right.
Against the Indianapolis Colts. That was the exact play. Yeah.
And Nelson is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And Lawrence just completely destroyed him on that play. And I don't know, it doesn't seem to me like he gets enough credit for that play. I thought that was just incredible.
I want to add one thing here, and it's not to diminish what you just said, but Quentin Nelson did not have a good season last year.
The whole line didn't have a good season.
I mean, if you listen to folks who covered the Colts, and then if you watch some of the tape, which I did when the Giants played the Colts, I did look at some of the cut-ups. Nelson was not the same Quentin Nelson who had played in previous seasons. He had a down year all around. That does not mean that Dexter Lawrence should be, taken lightly because he obliterated him on that play. Yeah. I don't want to say that. No, it's still a play that he made where he destroyed the guy. Yeah. But that was not the same Quentin Nelson that we had seen prior. I got to give you that. Why?
Was he hurt last year?
He was a little bit banged up last year.
Yeah, not to the degree where it should have impacted him that much.
Okay.
But he was not the same player.
Well, maybe that's just Nelson is just, Dexter's just that much better than everyone else.
Okay.
Have a nice weekend, guys.
All right,
you too.
Appreciate the phone call, Tom. He also dealt with injuries the previous year. He had that ankle issue in 2021. Right. There's been some lingering issues, but not to, once again, make an excuse for Quentin Nelson, that entire offensive line was an absolute mess last year.
It had a lot of trouble.
From left to right, no matter how you want to spin it.
And again, I'm a huge Quentin Nelson fan. Everybody who watches this show knows that. In fact, before we got to the Combine, the year he came out, I was all in on Quentin Nelson. It was only at the Combine that I said, no, the Giants need to draft Saquon Barkley. I moved off Quentin Nelson and decided they needed to draft Barkley. Huge Quentin Nelson fan, but he was not the same player.
And when you have a beat-up offensive line, a guy like Dexter Lawrence is going to fully capitalize. That's exactly what you should do in the NFL. But as far as Nelson, that play not giving Lawrence more notoriety, maybe in terms of the entire NFL landscape, I would say overall, how many defensive tackles do people talk about on a consistent basis?
Not
Outside of
very many.
Aaron Donald, who's in that conversation?
Not very
So
many.
it's not, to me, a knock on Dexter Lawrence. It's just the nature of the position.
Right.
Just doesn't get a lot of limelight under those circumstances. Let's head back to the lines. We got Hugo in New Jersey joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Hugo?
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
Hi.
What do you have for us?
It's interesting. You guys were talking about a guy who's listed as 6'4", 325, because I do have a question about one guy. I think it was John on one of last week's shows when talking about defensive line depth. Well, he mentioned two names. He mentioned Ryder Anderson, and I think from the comments of Coach Patterson, the Giants seem to be pretty high on Ryder Anderson. Obviously, he's done quite a bit of work in the off season,
Yeah, he bulked up.
putting on
Yeah.
weight and strength. But John threw out the name. Honestly, I had forgotten this guy's even on the roster. Vernon Butler. So I looked up Vernon Butler, and he's 6'4", 325. He was a former first-round pick. He was a good two-way defensive tackle a few years back for Carolina. So it got me wondering what he was on the practice squad for a good part of last year,
Right.
and they kept him around. So I guess my question is, what happened to Vernon Butler? Was he a guy who got injured and was essentially recovering from injuries for a year, or did he fall off the map? Just lost interest, or his game? Can you guys provide any insight? Because I know we do have a good defensive line coaching staff. So if anyone could get it out of him, it would be Coach Patterson and Brian Cox, our assistant D-line coach.
Well, you had the Panthers wound up declining his option, so they didn't see his rookie contract all the way throughout. And remember, they had the fifth-year option because he was a first-round pick. And then he had some run-ins late in that 2019 season in terms of he was ejected from a game involved in punching, and then he went to Buffalo, and then he went to the Raiders. He actually didn't even last with the Raiders. The Raiders cut him during the course of training camp, and then he didn't come to the Giants until like November.
Right.
So, I mean, he was out of football actually for the bulk of last season. He wasn't even around.
Chances are, and I can honestly tell you I did not pay any attention to him when he got here. Chances are, though, his conditioning was probably so far behind that there was no way he was going to be able to participate and give them anything in the final month of the season. That would be my logical assessment. Now, remember, he did have that pit stop in Buffalo, which means that Joe Shane knows who he is and may have seen something that thought, you know what, let's take a flyer, let's pick him up, and if you redshirt him for the rest of the season and you bring him back, give him a chance to compete after he has an off season to prepare, maybe he's got a chance to scratch the roster.
Yeah, plus also there's a lot of assistants that were with Brian Dable too, that were with him too.
Yeah, he's not that old. He's only 29, which is Leonard Williams' age. And it's just a very interesting and confusing career arc, because if he hasn't suffered any serious injuries, you got to wonder about why his games dropped off so much, because he was a productive player for a couple of years there. Anyhow, if we could get something out of him, that really adds to our defensive line depth.
Well, he'll compete with Robinson and Nacho for snaps in the rotation behind the starters. It's really that simple. And look, Joe Shane and Brian Dable were very, very specific in terms of trying to continue to upgrade the depth chart. The Giants believe, rightfully so in my mind, that their starting 22 is really pretty darn good. The depth chart is what needed the work, and so that's why a guy like Butler came here in November. That's why they signed the two free agents that they signed. Let these guys fight it out.
Sure, but I think if they were that confident about Vernon Butler, I don't think they would have invested in guys like A'Shawn Robinson and Nacho.
No, probably not.
Yeah, so I think he still has a very long shot to surpass guys like that, even in the event that somebody atop the depth chart was hurt. It's more of a potential selection. Hey, bring the guy in.
You take a flyer.
See what he could do. Give him another off season. And if he makes the team, great. If not, maybe we put him back on the practice squad and we'll see where he goes from there.
Now, for the last 2 months, I've been talking about Ryder Anderson because he did put on 20 pounds of beef. And he is a real thick specimen now. There is no doubt in my mind that they're going to move Ryder Anderson in terms of his backup role. He's going to wind up learning a bunch of different positions on that defensive line because now he's got the size and the strength to virtually play any position. He doesn't just have to be on the end as a rusher or on the end as a run stopper or a guy in the middle can be a plugger. He's now got the versatility to maybe play any of the defensive line positions because of the physical nature during that he's improved in, and I think it's a good thing for the Giants.
And appreciate the phone call, Hugo. With respect to Butler, I just looked up his numbers. He only played about 25 to 39% of the snaps in his 2 seasons in Buffalo, so he was more of a rotational type of guy.
Yeah, he's not
at that stage.
He's not a starter.
Yeah,
and I don't think anybody assumes that. I think, look. If you're the Giants, right, think about this. You want to enhance the depth chart as much as you possibly can with the limited resources that you have. And by the way, Butler didn't cost them a whole heck of a lot when they picked him up.
No, not at all.
It was pennies. Yeah. Pennies on the dollar. Why not? Let him work out in the offseason. Bring him in. See what happens in July and August. If it works out, great. If he doesn't, you didn't lose anything.
No, that's what I'm saying. It makes sense from a logical standpoint that you sometimes think ahead to the following season and get a head start. And especially if you have familiarity with the player, he probably has the appeal of wanting to come to play for your organization because at least he knows he's surrounded by coaches that know him as well.
The Giants did a good job at the end of the season in re-signing some under-the-radar guys, practice squad guys, and guys who were deep on the depth chart that nobody even talked about.
The futures contracts you're talking about. Yeah.
Right, those guys. They brought back several of those fellas to compete on this year's depth chart because they saw enough in practice to say, hey, a little more development, one more off season, just maybe, you might be good enough to crack the 53. There's nothing wrong with that. Because what you do when you tie those guys up, you save yourself having to go out and import some outsiders who might have to compete. And you know your guys more than you know those guys from the outside.
Plus, the other part of this is...
they know your system.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. Butler, for the 2 months he was here, because he was here through the playoffs, right? So that's a good 2 months. When he comes back in the spring, he's not playing catch-up because he's already been immersed in the scheme for the last 2 months. So I think that's also beneficial. Whereas if you brought in another defensive tackle, Paul, to your point, he's playing catch-up when he arrives in March, April. And then you hope that he catches up to where the rest of the group is. With Butler, you don't have to worry about that.
No, if you've got a head start with a guy, why not try to take advantage of that and see if it can produce for you?
Yeah. And remember, when it comes to the 53-man roster, this is the other thing you have to take into consideration. I guess we could bunch the defensive ends and the defensive tackles in one group, but we're looking at, what do you think, 9 guys maybe total at that position?
That
maybe
might be
10.
A little high.
That may be high. All right, so 8 perhaps. So when you think about that, all right, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, A'Shawn Robinson, Nacho, then you look at Ryder Anderson. Okay.
To me, that's it. For your defensive line, that might be it. That might be it. You may not even have room for one more guy on that line.
Yeah, because you may want to keep more outside linebackers. Right. It depends. And here's the other thing. Before we even get to a guy like Vernon Butler, DJ Davidson, who was hurt last season.
I know.
Okay? He's another guy in the conversation. Yep. And they just drafted Jordan Riley in the 7th round. So Butler, this is the point of when guys come back, they don't just stay where they're at. They have new faces they now have to compete with. And I don't know how the staff feels about Davidson and Riley and where they are progression-wise, but those are 2 guys that could easily be put ahead of Vernon Butler, depending on what happens in training camp.
Now, when you said 8 or 9, were you talking about edge plus the lineman?
Yes, that's what I was taking into consideration.
Okay, edge plus the lineman. Yeah. You probably have to keep 10, don't you?
Yeah, that's why I threw out. I think 9 to 10 is a reasonable number.
Yeah.
But if we're only focusing on the defensive lineman aspect, yes, we're maybe in the ballpark of 5 to 6. With respect to that tally.
Yeah.
And maybe they go on the low side because, once again, it depends on the health and how good they feel about the outside linebackers since those guys have been a little bit banged up over the course of their early career, specifically Ojulari and Thibodeau.
Then you got that project, Baldonado, the undrafted rookie free agent who,
out of Pitt.
They brought him in here because they saw some things that they liked. Now, he is a developmental guy, but how fast does his stock rise during the course of July and August? Does that suddenly put him into the equation?
No, it's a good point. I've brought his name up. I think maybe you and I were on the program. We were talking about the guys to look out for within the undrafted group, and he was the name that caught my attention. He's got a very interesting background, hasn't played a lot of football.
No.
He started over in Italy, and he's got the frame. You just look at him. You're like, that's a ball player. The question is, can you now direct that skill set to being productive on the NFL field? All right, let's head back to the phone lines. Wilson is in Roxbury joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Wilson?
Hey, guys. Long time no talk.
Hi, thanks for coming back to us.
Well, it depends on what he has to bring to the
Nah, he's cool.
forefront.
Go ahead.
Hey, I think, Lance, I think I got my A game today.
We'll see.
So don't get mad at me.
What do you got?
Listen, hey, I got a couple of things on Saquon, and I got 4 over and unders.
Just 4?
Hopefully you
Okay.
guys yeah, so hopefully you guys can help me make some money. But fully, real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. I got something that kind of bothered me a little. Last time I talked to you, and then you answered everything. I was off. I was already off the air.
Okay.
Do you remember when I called you that I was a little upset that somebody was still defending Joe Judge, and we were talking you, me, and Len, and John, and
Okay.
that I got whatever. It doesn't. But you said at the end of the show, at the end of that conversation, you said that you think that he's going to get another head coaching job in the NFL or a big college.
I think at some point in time, Joe Judge will get another chance. I do.
I think hell will freeze over before that happens.
Okay. That's
my
fine.
opinion.
Remember, he's not exactly an old-timer now. Joe Judge is on the young side of the scale when it comes to coaches. He's got a lot of years to go in this business if he wants it.
I know. I just think some people just have bad years as coaching, but I think this guy really bought the cake. But listen, I just don't like the guy personally. But that's not.
That's okay too.
So what else is on the laundry list?
Hey guys, listen. On Saquon, right? I really do believe this. Either he plays on a long-term deal or he doesn't play at all. Saquon Barkley is not going to play on
I completely disagree with you. What you're going into territory of is Le'Veon Bell. That's what you're saying. You're saying he's going to pull a Le'Veon Bell.
No, Lance. I think I was reading something that.
That's always dangerous when you read. But go ahead. Yes.
No. The Giants can rescind the franchise tag, right?
Sure.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can.
Because there's also like a loophole that if he signs the tag, he doesn't have to play till like the
week 10. Week 10, correct.
Lance,
not if he signs the tag. Meaning he would still not have signed the tag under those circumstances. Once you sign the tag, you have to show up. That would be if he doesn't sign the tag.
Correct.
He has it till week 10. Yeah.
Okay, but
correct.
Guys, listen. The Giants have a lot on their plate this year. This is a good year. This is a year that they want to see how Daniel Jones goes. They're not going to let Saquon. As much as they like him, they're not going to let him be a distraction. And he's not.
He's not going to do that. You're assuming he's going to do that.
What? Why would he not? Hold on. I'm going to ask you a question, and it's a real simple one. Why would Barkley not want to be a part of this, knowing that the Giants' arrow is pointing up and he is still going to be the number one option in the offense? He is still a huge part of what they want to do. Why would he not want to be that?
Because then it should have been. Paulie, listen. Because if that's the case, Paulie, I gotta assume stuff because I don't have a magic ball. I don't know what this guy's thinking, but what I do know is this: Paulie, listen, he made a mistake. Okay, look, it's like when you're selling a house, right? You have a house for $450 in the market, right? Oh well, somebody offers you $430. You know what? I'm gonna hold up, Nick. I think I can get my $450.
All right, Wilson, you're going the wrong way here. You're going the wrong way here. There's no way that he is going to get the large numbers that he or his people may have wanted before last season started. So what you have to do now, So what you have to do now is you have to cut your losses. If you're his camp, you have to sign whatever you can do to at least salvage a somewhat decent deal for him. If it's a 3 or 4 year deal, fine. If it's not, and they have to play on the 1 year tag, they will. He is not sitting out this season. Jonathan Casillas said on yesterday's show, and he said it last week too, he thinks there's a 3% chance that Barkley sits out the year.
No, I would put it at 0.
I say it's 0.03%.
Yeah,
that's how little it is.
You're assuming a guy is going to turn down $10 million in guaranteed
He won't get
money,
paid.
and he will never make that back.
won't get paid.
Le'Veon Bell made the same decision and regrets it to this day. Saquon is not naive. He watched what Le'Veon Bell did.
He'll ruin his career.
It's not happening.
But you're going on the presumption that it's on Saquon Barkley's hand. What I'm telling you is
whose hands is it in?
The Giants are going to rescind it. The Giants are going to.
Well, why would they rescind the tag? Why would they rescind the tag? It's a placeholder right now on the salary cap.
You just drove off the road, Wilson. You just drove off the road. That's not happening.
Why would?
Do you know how much of the playbook is designed around Saquon Barkley?
Okay, all right.
You're going to throw away like 9 chapters of the offensive playbook just like that? Are you crazy?
No, Wilson, let me jump in here. It seems like your argument is Saquon's a distraction, so the Giants need to cut their losses. That's what.
Exactly.
No, okay,
exactly.
all right. So then let me ask you this. Hold on. The Buffalo Bills are having some drama with Stephon Diggs because you love to read everything that the media throws out there. So you must be well read. Well, you have to be well read up on this. I'm assuming, and I know it's dangerous when you assume. Should the Buffalo Bills cut Stephon Diggs? Should they cut Stephon Diggs right now? Because supposedly he's a distraction. What should the Buffalo Bills do? He's under contract.
But he's under contract, right? So he's not like in Saquon Barkley's.
Saquon is under contract. The tag is there, and if
he's not under contract, but he's tagged.
Well, but it's a placeholder.
It's a placeholder.
He is on the books for the $10 million.
He is on the books.
He's on the books. He's on the books. Yeah.
Can I ask you something? Can I ask something? Can I ask you something? Let me ask something.
Yes. Well, we've given you our permission.
One more shot here, Wilson.
One more statement.
Because right now you're making Ralph Cramden look like a genius.
Okay. Let me ask something. Is there a chance that the Giants, in the back of their mind, think if Saquon Barkley signs the franchise tag, he's not going to be happy and he's not going to be the same player? Could that be possible?
No, I don't think they're worried about that, Wilson. I really don't think that's
doubtful.
A concern. I think they know who Saquon is as an individual. I think they have had communication throughout this whole process. And last year, I think everyone got to know each other. So I don't think anybody's out of character with respect to this. This is a business decision. That's what it is. Most players go through this. And not to get off topic, Paul, but I've said this multiple times on the show, and Wilson continues to go back down this road about, what he should have done months upon months ago. Saquon is looking for guarantees, just like every other player. It's the guaranteed money. It's not the average annual salary. Stop reading articles online and saying if he doesn't get $15 million a year as opposed to $14 million, he's going to be unhappy. They want the guaranteed money because that's security in case, God forbid, you get hurt in a position where you take a lot more hits than the others. So that's the equation. It's the guaranteed money, not the average annual salary.
What Wilson doesn't know about Saquon Barkley, apparently, is that this guy has a tremendous amount of pride. He is a very, very serious competitor.
Yep.
He has only so many prime years as a running back in this league. He is not going to throw away one of those and a potential 1,300-yard rushing season and just chuck that away, aside from the $10 million that the tag would give him.
Yep.
He's not going to throw away 1,300 yards. This is a guy, Saquon Barkley, who, if he has another 5 really solid seasons, and I don't think that's out of the question because I've seen him rehab from career-threatening injuries and come back and be a Pro Bowl player. I don't think it's unreasonable to think he could have 3, 4, maybe 5 more terrific seasons. Now, Lance, follow me here. He's, about 5,800 yards, I think, shy of 10,000 for his career, and we all know that's like 400 home runs in baseball. It is a very prestigious number. It's not top, but it puts you in select company. 10,000-yard rushers are special dudes. Okay, I still don't know why Otis Anderson is not in the Hall of Fame, by the way. Tiki Barber doesn't get enough consideration either. But 10,000 is a very big number. We know Barkley has great reverence for history and his place potentially in it. He is not, I repeat, not going to throw away a paycheck and throw away one of the few prime years he has left in his career that will ultimately cost him a very large portion of statistics, which, I hate to say this, but on the back end, your legacy is your legacy, and people throw out your career totals, and very often, that's how they define you. Why would he throw away potentially 1,300 yards?
Well, and also a year in the prime of his career from an age standpoint that you're talking about. I mean, we're talking about a 26-year-old player. So, I mean, that to me is the first thing that I would throw out there, more so than anything else.
Maybe we could also throw in something else. The Giants look like a really good team this year. They're a bona fide playoff contender. How far they go, I don't know. But they're a bona fide playoff contender. They have to be in that conversation. You only get so many shots during your NFL career at making the playoffs, which then gives you the opportunity to play for a Super Bowl. Why would he give that up?
Well, especially after missing the playoffs each of his first 4 seasons and dealing with the injuries. You could look at it through that lens. But here's the other thing. Looking at it from a contractual standpoint, the point was he'd be a distraction. He wouldn't want to play hard because he'd be unhappy that he's on the 1-year deal. Well, hold on a minute. If you don't have long-term security, Paul, you have more of an incentive to want to play hard.
That too.
Because let's say the Giants don't tag him for a second straight year. I know they could tag him, but let's say they don't. That means he's going to hit the free agent market. Don't you want to hit the free agent market coming off another very strong season?
2023 is his last chance to enhance his earning power.
Yeah. So that's another reason why I wouldn't be worried about the distraction or he's going to be unhappy and he's not going to play hard. Because he understands if I'm playing on the franchise tag, and once again, we're going down a hypothetical road, assuming they don't get a long-term deal done by the 17th of July, he doesn't know where he's going to be in 2024. He's not in any position to make guarantees. You go out, you play hard, you increase your earning power, and you see where the cards fall into place the next season.
There is no reason for the Giants to be concerned that Saquon Barkley would be a negative on this roster. There is no reason at all. None.
And once again, I cannot envision a situation
We're done with that goal.
Where a player is turning down $10 million in guaranteed money. I don't think enough has been talked about of the lessons from Le'Veon Bell. When the guy, I'm going to end it at this, when the player, who's now a boxer, by the way, Bell's not even playing football anymore.
Is he a boxer now?
He's been involved in some boxing, I think.
Oh,
no,
man.
but he's been on the record, Paul. He said if he could go back in time, I'm paraphrasing it, he would have never done what he did. Do you think that a player is going to take a page out of the Bell playbook if he himself regrets it? I don't see it happening. Let's head back to the lines. Michael's in Indiana, joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Michael?
Hey, Lance. Hey, Paul. How y'all doing?
Hi.
Doing very well. What's on your mind?
Long time listener, at least in my life, a third of my life for at least the last 13 years.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, so I want to say Dexter Lawrence, in my opinion, and is an elite player, and I want to say why. The reason why is John and you, Lance, the other day talked about the most penalized players on our team, and who was the first one? Darnay Holmes, was he number 1?
Correct.
And then Dexter Lawrence.
I'd have to look that up. Dex may have been number 2. I'm going to bring up my chart, but you can continue. We're listening. Yeah. I'll bring it up just to confirm.
So Dexter Lawrence, the reason why I say he's an elite player is because he had 3 or 4 penalties that to me were clear not penalties, and he was just too fast for as big as he was to get to the quarterback and bring him bring him down in the way that he did. And first time Pro Bowl last year. I think, with his contract, he's getting paid like an elite player, top 3 in his position. And beyond that, I think for years to come, I think it's great to have him looking forward. And I don't want to speak on Saquon Barkley. I listen every day. I hear a caller every day call in talking about the contract, but I appreciate the analysts on it.
Before you go, Dexter Lawrence was second on the Giants in penalties. He had 6 called against him, 4 roughing the passer, 1 defensive hold, and 1 offsides.
Yep. Yeah, Evan Neal also had 6 as well, tied with him.
Yes.
Yeah, all 4 of the roughing the passers I did not agree with.
Well, those are interpretive calls. So, I mean, those could go either way. It is what it is. I think a lot of them are full speed, refs trying to interpret whether or not the body came down. There's been a lot that have been put under the microscope this past season.
Yeah, sexy Dexy, he's an animal.
See, one of the really cool, if you want to enhance your point, I know it's hard to determine, but what you want to really figure out is how many penalties did he cause on offensive linemen or running backs, which to my knowledge, that's not a public chart. Now, I probably, I got so many things that I keep. That's not one of the stats I keep. But that would be a very interesting number. Of all the defensive tackles in the league, how many did he cause, and where does he rank in that regard? That would be a really cool one to have.
Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And then when I say not to speak on Saquon, but to follow up on what you said on the 5-year deal and Saquon reaching that 10,000, I was a guy on draft day sitting at number 2 on my way home from my union apprenticeship school, driving home, listening to the pick and going absolutely insane. I was more excited for that pick than I think a lot of, Giants fans and most analysts at the time, obviously. But I believe I see him 6 years, and I believe him hitting that 10,000 to add on to what you said with the 5 years. I see him with a 4, maybe 5-year contract, and then at the end of his career, getting like a 1-year incentives deal.
All right, Michael. Yep.
I'll take the rest off the line. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, you got it. Appreciate the phone call.
It's hard to say how many years anybody will play and if he'll be with one team. Remember guys like Marcus Allen and Emmitt Smith and even Franco Harris. Some of your great running backs who are really high on that list, very few. I mean, like Walter Payton, played with one team. So
game was also different at that point.
No doubt.
More of an emphasis on running backs, too.
But certainly there's a possibility that maybe he does get like a 4-year deal from the Giants, plays all 4 years, has great seasons. So he's right now roughly 5,800 yards away from 10,000. You know what? You could do that in 4 years. That's not...
Assuming you stay healthy, of course.
Yeah. That's not Herculean. It requires... high-quality seasons. But remember, we also have a 17th game now, and a lot of people seem to think within 2 years we may have an 18th game.
Possible.
Is that rushing or total? I'm just curious.
It's 4,249 yards rushing in his career.
That's just the rushing aspect.
So he's about 5,800 short of getting to 10,000. I think it is a reachable number for him, and I think I'm going to tell you now, knowing how he values history and his place in it, I think that's an important number for him.
Well, remember, more than half of those yards came from 2018 and 2022.
I know that.
So, like I said, he holds up. Could he get in that 1,200, 1,300 category?
Do you have
for
the list
seasons?
of how many 10,000-yard rushes there were on the NFL? Do you have that handy?
I do not have that in front of me.
I'm going to look for it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. There's, here we go. There are 25 guys.
And it's the who's who of NFL history.
I mean, look at these guys.
Yeah.
I don't even have to go through the names. You will know them all, folks. You know them all, and most of them are in Canton.
100%, yeah. But, once again, there's a stretch of these guys holding up for the most part. I think that's the common element where you're talking about consecutive seasons nonstop. And Saquon, he's had 2, but there's been an interruption in between.
I would bet without having to look up each one of these 25 guys, Jamal Lewis is 10,607. He's the last guy on this list that I'm looking at right now. I would venture to guess that most of these guys probably played at least 10 years in the league.
I would say that
and
that's
probably averaged a little less than 1,000 a year. I don't necessarily think that guys did it in 10 years or less. There's a few of them. There's a few of them.
I mean, I'm looking through the list, and I have the years in which they've played, and I'm looking for a guy that had a
Jim
short.
Brown, 9 seasons.
Oh, I know, but he's
yeah.
the GOAT.
Yeah.
Don't even talk about Jim Brown. Pearson, I'm glad you know him because he's a lot older than you. Just passed away. Rest in peace, Jim.
Yeah. I mean, everyone on this list, I'm going from top to bottom, is in the double-digit season tally.
Right. So, I don't think it's unthinkable to believe that he could become a 10,000-yard rusher in the next 4, certainly 5 years. I don't think that's unthinkable at all.
Well, the other thing that would be interesting is, remember, guys could play 10 or 11 seasons. Of those 10 or 11, did they hold up? Because, once again, Saquon, he started in 2018, okay? We're at the point where he's been in the NFL for 5 seasons, but he really has only had 3.
I know.
Where you can say there's consistent production because of non-injuries. So I'd be curious what the common element is. All these guys who have played 10 to 15 years, would you say the majority of the seasons they held up? And I would say probably you're going to find that's the case.
And then, of course, you have guys like Marcus Allen, who finished up with the Kansas City Chiefs for a couple of years and, wasn't quite the same back. His role changed. It was diminished, but he was still very productive. And so, I'm not saying Saquon Barkley is going to be the same guy for all of these years, but his roles could change as he moves on in his career, and he could still tack on some numbers on the back end. Didn't Emmitt Smith rush for like 900 yards with the Cardinals in his final season or 2 in the NFL?
Yeah, well, he was with them for 2 seasons. He was with them for 03 and 04.
And one of those, the second to last year, I think he ran for like 900 yards.
I think that's...
with Arizona. He wasn't the Dallas Cowboys Emmitt Smith anymore, but he still got some stuff done.
What I was going to say about your point about Marcus Allen is the fact that he played 11 seasons with the Raiders before he even went to the Chiefs.
That's
so
true.
That's a high volume of production opportunity. He had 937 yards in his very last season in the NFL, Emmitt Smith, the second year in Arizona.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, he only had 256 in the first season.
Okay, so
Played
it was the
10 games.
last year.
It was the last year, correct.
Nothing
Second
wrong with
year
that.
with Arizona. Sure.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do think Barkley's legacy is important to him, and not because he's cocky or arrogant, but I think because he has so much pride in his craft, and I think it means something to him to be amongst the elites. And
I also think he loves the game too.
He does.
I mean,
There's no
alone.
question. Well, you have to love the game if you want to be one of the best.
Yep. And you want to take the hits you do.
There you
game
go.
in and game out. Few reminders before we head back to the phone lines. Make sure you check out the Giants Huddle podcast. You could search for that on your favorite podcast platform. You go to giants.com/podcast. The 2023 NFL schedule is officially out. Single game tickets are on sale now. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. You can visit giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. And speaking of season tickets, you could take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships, they're now available for the 2023 campaign. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And the Giants official connected TV streaming app, it's Giants TV. It brings you original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We check in with Coach Marvin. He's in Delaware. Coach Marvin, what's happened?
How you doing, Lance and Paul?
Doing all right.
What do you say, Coach?
Yeah, I was just listening to you guys. Y'all talk about Marcus Allen. Also, got to remember, Marcus Allen's role would diminish as a Raider because of Bo Jackson. And him and Al Davis had issues where Al Davis pulled them his last few years.
Correct.
So he didn't get as many yards as he could have gotten. And also that list you guys was looking at, those guys at 10,000 yards. You said it was 25 guys in there.
Jamal Lewis is number 25, yeah.
I wonder how many of them have fullbacks in front of them.
Well, Coach, you and I will forever pine to get a fullback in front of Saquon Barkley, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't. But
by the way, I have 31 on the list.
Maybe the list I called was...
I'm looking at 31.
The one I called up may have been outdated.
Yeah, I have Ricky Williams as the cutoff with 10,009.
Okay, there you go.
So it's possible it's a few more.
It might have been in a bridge list.
Yeah.
Right.
Still, that's a short
NFL
list.
history-wise?
When you consider all the players that have carried the ball.
Yep.
Right. Right. And going back to the caller was talking about rescinding Barkley's tag.
Forget it, Coach.
You gotta that's absurd. You have to be fired to do something like that. I mean, we will be questioning Joe, and he's not that kind of guy. But you have to question a GM that would do that with Barkley. And I know these guys, they want a contract based on, they want security, and that's the way the game is. Because you don't know. You can get the $10,000 and $10 million, and you get hurt, and it's gone.
Sure.
I believe it's hard to see what guys going to do when you're talking money. I don't know what people. I always say people react different when you're talking money than you normally see them when they're not talking money. Somebody mess with your check and take money out of your check you didn't know about, they're going to see a different side of you.
Sure, but I don't think most people are going to turn down $10 million. That's the main point.
Right. And and that's why I think my thinking is the sitting out the year, no. But I think he has up to the 10th week to sign it.
Correct.
And he'll still get the $10 million. Am I right in that? So he
No, it gets prorated. It gets prorated.
Yeah.
Oh, it does.
If he comes in after week 10, he gets whatever's left.
Yeah, that's more of a reason why I'd be stunned if any of these threats that people are worried about is actually going to come to
fruition. He'll be there in the
Right.
lineup opening day against the Cowboys. You can bank on it.
Right. I believe that, but I don't know. I'm not 100%. I just don't know. But I believe he will be there. But I'm thinking, again, it did happen before. Emmitt Smith did it, but Dallas needed him, and he forced them to sign him, I think, after week 3 of their championship.
Yeah, I think that was 92. But then again, that wasn't the franchise tag, though, at that point, too. So, we're talking about very different economics.
Correct.
He wasn't guaranteed $10 million at that point.
Correct.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Lance. But
the tag changes everything. That's why Daniel Jones had to sign. Once he signed, the Giants then had all the leverage because they could tag Barkley. But again, Coach, I've been telling you this is what was going to happen for a year. I knew the way this was going to shake out.
And it did shake out that way, Paul. Exactly, and I agreed with you once you said that's how it had to be done that way.
No doubt.
And but if you're looking at Barkley, go back and look at Daniel Jones. When did he sign? Wasn't that the last few hours? Or
it was right before the tag deadline.
Right before the deadline, and that's why be alert on July 17th.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they're going to have. I would like to see them give in because he's looking, and Lance is right. He's looking for guaranteed money. It's not the average. And I think they're basing it on if you get tagged a second time.
Correct. Well, that's what any good agent,
100%.
because if the tag goes up to $12 million, then Saquon in his head is saying, I can get $22 million guaranteed over the next 2 years. So therefore, you'd want to try to secure that level ballpark of guaranteed money. He doesn't care. What does he care about making $15 million a year if he may not be on the team 4 years down the road? All that is that's a number that the agent can take to other clients and say, look, I made this running back the second highest paid running back in NFL history in 2023. Great. That doesn't give you any guarantee. Those are the economics of football.
Lance, that's checkmate. You just put you just made the whole point to the whole thing, to the whole contract negotiations. That's exactly what it is. I just feel they somehow going to have to pay that because the guy deserves it, and he's too important to go through this. And I know they know this. I know Joe them know this, and they're going to have to. Both sides going to have to negotiate, and I would hope that they would get him to the $22 million of what he's asking for because the running backs has been diminished. Some of them, we got 3 of them that probably deserve that money.
Let's close this topic.
And appreciate the phone call, Coach Marvin.
Coach Marvin, we'll talk to you again soon. Let's close this topic with one really wrap-up thought, and that is Saquon Barkley wants to be here as much as the Giants want him here. And the fact is, missing these first 6 months of the 2023 calendar really does not impact a whole lot. It really doesn't. Okay? When he's on that field, opening day against the Dallas Cowboys, that's where the impact of all of this is going to be needed. And he will be there when he is needed. That's it.
Well, and the other thing is, if we do go down the road where he has to play under the tag, he wouldn't be the first, and he's not going to be the last. And here's the other thing to take into consideration before we wrap up. it's an interesting market right now, Paul, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about this because they tend to operate in their own bubble of fandom. Josh Jacobs was given the tag. The Raiders have not given him a long-term deal, and he wants the same thing as Saquon. And Tony Pollard with the Cowboys. I understand Pollard's coming off an injury. Well, I mean, Jacobs had an outstanding season, though. Very similar to Saquon. Okay,
no
so
question.
He's got every position to say, I want to get paid too. It's the market of the running back right now. A lot of teams are saying to themselves, outside of the deal Christian McCaffrey got, and McCaffrey had injury baggage, you're not seeing a lot of teams, go in the direction of investing in running backs 4 to 5 years. It's just, that's the nature of the league right now, Paul. It's got nothing to do with Saquon. That's the direction we're seeing everybody go.
The shame of it is a lot of these camps will look at the outlier guy, like a McCaffrey, okay, or like the quarterback in Cleveland, Watson.
Yep.
They'll see the outlier guy who broke the bank and immediately say, well, look, he got that, so I'm basing my ask off of him.
100%.
Okay, but any rational, logical person knows that that's not real. That was an aberration.
Yep.
It was a foolish and unmistakably nutso contract, which some sucker team just decided they were going to break their own bank to pay. That doesn't mean the rest of us have to be stupid, foolish, and ruin our cap.
Well, that has already been squashed because if you've noticed, quarterbacks have been paid since Deshaun Watson, and nobody has entered his guaranteed money territory where it's been fully guaranteed. So that is 100% the outlier. However, you saw Daron Payne got paid, which influenced Dexter Lawrence's deal.
I know.
So sometimes teams are waiting. Who's going to be the first one to make the move? Is it going to be the Raiders? Is it going to be the Giants? And the agents are looking and watching. That also helps trigger a deal too. So we move on and we wait till the deadline of July 17th. All right, that is going to wrap up today's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We're going to be back up and running again tomorrow right here at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on BBKL. Today's episode is part of the Giants platforms everywhere and Giants.com/podcast. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Meadows. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Friday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.